Bromwich's argument about American exceptionalism revolves around a few key points. In his first point, he classifies that treating oneself as an exception is an immoral action. Bromwich states, morality, by definition, means a standard of right and wrong that applies to all persons without exception. Secondly, Bromwich asserts that nations can practice exceptionalism in three main ways. A nation can be thought to be exceptional by its very nature, like practicing democracy in a time when authoritative monarchies dominated the land. A nation can be admirable by its history or its cultural circumstances, like a nation that guarantees its citizens undeniable human rights in its constitution. And finally, Bromwich asserts a nation can be exceptional through communitarian nationalism, a deep unconditional love for one's neighborhood, community, or country because of the feelings of affection one has towards the nation due to the fact that they grew up there and continue to live there. Bromwich uses Athens as an example of an exceptional nation in the Teacher of the World section in his article. He uses an oration from Pericles to demonstrate that the Athenians rationalized their position as the school of Hellas, or in other words, the most worthy Greek city-state through their long and magnificent history, their conquests of warring colonies, and because of the unique political institution their forefathers had passed down to them. Bromwich uses the Gettysburg Address by Abraham Lincoln in the section Guilty Past, Innocent Future to demonstrate an exceptionalist perspective that has been used to look at the United States history. He argues that Lincoln uses the Declaration of Independence as a tool to demonstrate that the United States was founded on morally good principles. Lincoln is saying even though these principles are not equally shared throughout the nation, through the sacrifice of hundreds of thousands, the United States will be able to enfranchise everyone with liberty and representative democracy. If the Union succeeds in its righteous war, then the sins of the past will be absolved and the world will look upon the United States as the school of modern democracy. In the last section, The Ties That Bind and Absolve, Bromwich argues that politicians appeal to the public to look at the United States as one big family. He uses examples from Governor Mario Cuomo and President Barack Obama as evidence. Bromwich argues that looking at the nation as a family creates an implicit feeling of unconditional love because of the transfer of feelings between the individual and the association with the nation as a family. One loves their family unconditionally. After all, they raised you, didn't they? Bromwich asserts that this is a destructive doctrine to believe in because unconditional love can guide us to make immoral decisions about family members. So why wouldn't one also make immoral decisions about their nation? Bromwich uses examples of American rhetoric to demonstrate this unconditional love for the United States that has seeped into American discourse. According to Bromwich, we label torture enhanced questioning, wars of conquest we call wars of liberation, and we have the propensity to label distant non-American allies as imminent threats. Bromwich concludes his argument by stating that the doctrine of the national family in the United States is less overtly exceptional than my country right or wrong, or my country good and getting better. But it has the same effects of distorting moral actions towards groups that don't exist within the national family. He claims that the sooner we can recognize and correct this exceptional belief, the sooner other nations will come to respect the United States and not see it as a malevolent, exceptional superpower.
We agree with Bromwich's argument because he gives a clear definition of what American exceptionalism is. He gives sufficient context to his argument. He uses historical examples to support his side, uses family metaphors, and states that it is okay to recognize the things that have gone wrong throughout history. The dictionary definition of exceptionalism is stated as being different from the norm, but Bromwich's definition is a little different. Still, he clarifies exactly what he is saying in order for everyone to understand. By doing this, his argument begins to make more sense, and it allows for more people to join in on the discussion. Like giving a clear definition, giving context further clarifies Bromwich's argument and what his idea of exceptionalism is. Secondly, Bromwich's use of historical examples helps to strengthen his argument. Using historical evidence is better than using only anecdotal evidence as it gives more justification for his opinion. He also includes the use of family metaphors. The use of these metaphors recontextualizes arguments and allows for the reader to contemplate his points in order to understand them. Also, comparing exceptionalism to a family emphasizes the lengths we will go to excuse the bad actions of our country. like how we hold unconditional love for our family members and will excuse their bad actions in a similar way. He also explains cognitive dissonance in an easily digestible way, changing your thought pattern in order to justify something you previously would disagree with. Finally, Bromwich admits that it is okay to recognize everything we have done wrong throughout history. He states, "Unconditional love encourages habits of suppression and euphemism that sink deep roots into the common culture." He is encouraging people to address the bad parts about America's history and not suppress freedom of thinking for the sake of pretending like America is the best country in the world.
While there is a lot of Bromwich's argument that we do agree with, there are a few problems with it as well. There are three main problems with his claim. 1, he uses secondary sources. 2, he has confirmation bias. And 3, he uses patch writing. In addition to this, his morality is not very clear, and he uses repetitive premises. In order to back up his premises, Bromwich uses statements made from past government leaders such as Barack Obama and Abraham Lincoln, but he uses his own interpretation of their words to go against exceptionalism. In a statement made by Barack Obama when addressing West Point graduates, the context made it clear that Obama was referring to the United States as the greatest country in the world. These biases are shown to be useful in Bromwich's interpretation of exceptionalism. In addition to this, when discussing the speech that Pericles gave, Bromwich would reiterate Pericles' words to his advantage and rephrase only the statements that supported his argument. In the beginning of his argument, Bromwich sets the definition for exceptionalism as being arranged through the generalizations of people. This claim makes people go by a black and white fallacy. The judgment made by Bromwich has grouped people together and claims they all write their own history, but it becomes questionable if it is factually proven. Due to the fact that morals are also arranged with what he wrote, it is unclear whether or not his bias is correct. And finally, based on the argument as a whole, Bromwich could have combined a few of his premises to reduce his argument to be more simple. While originally Bromwich sets up multiple historical examples, later in his argument they become mixed heavily when he's discussing American exceptionalism. Rather than focusing solely on American exceptionalism, there's also a heavy emphasis that critiques nations who believe they are exceptional. The result is that the premises become intertwined with each other rather than just being reduced together.
When it comes to Bromwich's argument in concerns to American exceptionalism, it can be agreed that the argument may hold its own validity. Through comparisons of historical cities and people, Bromwich compares the types of exceptionalism and compares it to America now. The argument being made is one that can be agreed with, as America, much like other countries, holds itself to a standard that considers itself excused from certain circumstances. This school of thought on its own is immoral. As a result, it can be broken down in a few statements just how moral America and its people are in terms of exceptionalism and individuality in comparison to other countries. Bromwich defines morals as a standard of right and wrong that applies to all persons without exception, which is already a statement that can be agreed with in this case. With morality defined, it can be tested if someone is moral. If the morality of a situation is ignored by a person or party and it is not applied to them equally as it is others, they are therefore immoral. If America is therefore displaying exceptionalism in both the eyes of its people and the people of other countries, America and its people are therefore immoral. In conclusion, Bromwich's argument is agreed with despite the conditions of his argument in which confirmation bias and secondary sources were used.